All right, so today we're going to be talking about geometry and an introduction to geometry. And I absolutely love geometry. Geometry really is all about shapes and their properties, triangles and circles and squares, and three-dimensional figures as well, such as cubes and prisms. But the definition of geometry is a branch of math that focuses on the measurement and the relationship of lines, angles, surfaces, solids, and points. So we got a lot to learn, don't we? So let me take you. Today we're going to be learning all kinds of definitions, and I gave you a sheet to follow along with. Those definitions are going to be incredibly important because they're going to help us deal with the geometry of life. Geometry really just means measuring our world. Gosh, can you imagine if we tried to measure our world? Well, we need to know some of these terms in order to help us. So here we're going to do it. What am I? This, G, we call it a point. A point is an exact location in space. I am standing in space right now and I am in a point. I'm the point in my classroom in front of the room. We would say, we would call that point G. We would actually just write it as G or point G. So in your notes, you're going to be writing all this down. All right, so that's what a point is. All right, this, what am I? So I'd like you to draw it. You have a line with two arrows at the end and at least 2 points on it. Point B and point C. What am I? I'm a line. A line is a straight path of points that goes on forever in 2 directions. So the arrows at the end indicate that I am going in those directions forever. If the arrows are not there, it is not a line, okay? That means it doesn't go on forever. And there are a couple of cases where it may mean line, but it'll say it. How do we call this? We call this line BC. So we use the points on the line to tell me the name of the line. We give it a name, just like John. Line John, but this is line BC. How we write it is really important. You guys are going to have to learn what symbols actually mean in geometry and what they're referring to. So if I want to talk about this line, I take either of the letters for the points, BC or CB, and above it, I write a line with 2 arrows on the top of it. This is the symbol or notation for lines. All right, moving on. What am I? Now, let's look at this. We're going to draw this piece of a line and 2 things at the ends, and it doesn't go on forever, so we don't call it a line. What do we call it? We call it a line segment. A line segment is a piece or a part of a line that has 2 distinct endpoints, okay? We would say line segment, TN, we would use those 2 points, and we would write it as TN or NT, the endpoints. We have to use the endpoints, and instead of putting a line with arrows, we're just going to put a line segment on top of those letters. So that's going to show me that it's a line segment versus a line. Okay? All right, keep going. Ooh, look at this one. This one I have this endpoint J right here, and I go on, and I have an arrow indicating I'm going on forever. This is called a ray. A ray is a part of a line. It has one endpoint and extends forever, but only in one direction. I want you to think about the sun's rays. The sun being the endpoint and those rays coming to Earth and actually extending out forever into the universe. It's called a ray, okay? We would call this ray JK. Just kidding. Ray JK. And the symbol that we use for ray is we use the endpoint. The endpoint actually has to come first, okay? J and K. And we draw a line over it with an arrow. The arrow will always point to the right, even if the ray is going in funny different directions. We're always going to point it to the right. And that would be ray JK. Okay, I'm going to give you a second to write all that down. Making sure everyone can see everything. Perfect. All right, moving on. Oh, what am I? Now this is really hard because this looks like a little parallelogram, and these arrows going off it, what they mean is they extend in both directions. Now those arrows are normally not there. This is a plane. I want you for now to think of a plane as a piece of paper, a flat piece of paper that extends in both directions forever, okay? And that's the definition. A plane is an endless flat surface. We would call this plane LMN. See those 3 points on it? And if we would write it, oh, I'm not going to use that symbol. I'm sorry, I forgot to change this one. We would just write it as plane LMN for now, okay? For now. All right, a couple more. Ooh, I love these. Well, right now, what am I? You should be saying, well, that's a line, because it's got arrows at the end, and that's a line. These are 2 lines, 2 very special lines. These lines actually help us so that we can sit in classrooms and that we can have a house that we don't hit our heads on. These are called parallel lines. Parallel lines. Parallel lines, they never cross, and they stay the same distance apart. They never intersect. Parallel lines never intersect. Think about the ceiling and the floor being millions and millions of lines. If the ceiling and the floor, if those lines that are on them weren't parallel and eventually they'd intersect, that means that our rooms would look like this, and eventually they'd close in on each other if they intersected, and we'd hit our heads, wouldn't we? So parallel lines are things that never intersect. Just think about it. Think about my hands right now. They never intersect. They're never going to cross, okay? We would say line AD is parallel to line VW. That's what we would say about these 2 lines. Okay, let me move this up a little bit. Erase that, giving you some time to write that down. And we would write it as, oh, this is hard. This is the hardest one so far. AD with the line symbol above it, because we said line AD, is parallel. It's 2 lines right next to each other going up and down, is parallel to line VW. So when I write this, you should be able to tell me what that means and be able to draw it, okay? All right, that's where I'm going to stop today. If you need to, I want you to go back and just watch what I just did after you've gotten all the notes in. And then I'm going to finish up the notes tomorrow in class, and we're going to do some stuff with it, okay? Have a great night.